We both fight fires.
I am the Lincoln County Fire and Emergency Manager Director for the county, and so I take care of the 7 volunteer. I administer to the 7 volunteer fire departments in the county, of which Nogal is one of those.
Yeah, and I know a few on the Nogal Fire Department, Tim and Carl. And,
Yes, sir.
A couple other guys. But
Chris Rowe is chief.
I met Chris.
And so
at their
He's
fundraiser.
supposed to be here. Yeah, you can pass it.
would you like to look at that?
I've already seen it.
Okay.
Let me see that.
Before that, I came from Colorado.
Yes, sir.
Moved down from the mountainous area of Colorado, but it was just getting too busy, and so I wanted a little more peace, so we came here, my wife and I. Now we're neighbors with Georgia, who we both live right at the mouth of the canyon.
Okay.
So anyway,
Okay.
it's a little, made me a little nervous about all the timber up here.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little fire recently on a property this winter.
Oh, yes, sir.
And I don't know if you knew about that, but
It was right at about 148. I believe.
yeah, right above the
140.
marijuana patch.
Yes, sir.
Well, boy, everybody would have gotten high if it had caught fire, huh?
Hey, I'll watching it very closely.
Was everybody standing by the fence?
There was around 12 or 1 at night. I think there was a fire or a lightning strike or something.
It
Maybe.
was, I'm not exactly sure, but it did involve the power pole.
Okay, and it hit a
Because it was-
structure, right, sparked a structure. I walked down there because we lived right above that,
Yes, sir.
and right down to Nogal Road and walked over. Georgia never even woke up, but there was all these trucks coming and going.
As long as it's not yours, not a problem, right?
Yeah, but it made me nervous because all of the timber on our property, there's a lot of pinon and also juniper, you know, the 1-seed juniper.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I had a guy named Dusty come up and clear a lot of that out. And I haven't burned all the slash piles yet, but there's probably 7 different slash piles we created just from trimming the trees and clearing it back on our property. But I didn't know there would be a possibility of, you know, like state helping us out with some of that.
So, you know, we've been paying somebody a ton to do that for us, and then my husband helps him haul it all the way to the landfill
Yeah.
every few weeks.
So, that said, and Frank, tell me if I'm ahead of this, but after talking in the little village of Lincoln a couple of weeks ago, they decided that they would go together and rent a roll-off. And you know, if a roll-off costs $200, then, or if let's just say it costs $400 for the huge roll-off. Well, if there's 10 of them, y'all pitch $40 in, and then y'all put all the dead and down stuff that you could in it, they'd haul it off. So you're done for, I mean, you have then at least taken care of some of the stuff on your property that's just dead and down, you know, branches, twig, you know, garbage, maybe even pine needles and stuff that you put in, and it cleans your property up and at the start, and it costs you $40.
So,
And
for the people who are ignorant to this terminology, a roll-off.
It's a big, huge trash container. And
Okay.
It's about the length of the trash compactor that's here.
Yes.
At
Okay.
May, I think, or something.
Okay,
It's about that length, and it probably stands 6 feet, 8 feet
okay.
tall. So, and
it'll
you would
hold
just,
a lot.
you know,
And it will, and so it's like $200 a month,
no,
or
it one time, you know.
a one
you wanna-
time, you
wanna
just
have
tell
it-
them, okay.
They'll leave it for you for 3 or
However long
5
you need it.
days, and
Okay.
you load it, and then when it's full, you say you can come and pick it up.
We did that. We did it for just our property.
And
We got full fast.
And I'll go one step further, because Firewise and Fire Adaptive Communities both have grants that they will pay for that. You have to, Firewise has a program where you sign up, and there's a little bit of paperwork involved and some things that you have to do manually. You have to show progress, and this is one of them. But you apply for these grants.
Sonterra
has
did
done
it.
it twice,
That's
and it's like $500 grant a year. So that pays for a roll-off, pays for a chipper, pays for,
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking that if we could get enough people in this, community to come together, we could decide, what is it that we have a need for, and then, I didn't know that grant money was available, but that was my thought. We would, possibly pool money together and then, be able to, like the chipper idea. I thought that was a great idea.
The roll-off, whatever it might be, and then that way you're not out thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
Maybe it might be
yeah,
hundreds, but
no, that's good.
if everybody chips in, then maybe it's not so much.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't wanna just, what, everybody says, oh, we don't want it clear cut. Well, we don't want it clear cut either. We want you to just know what, with this information, what's safe room around your house, what's safer room around your house, and what other things, obviously if it's a neighborhood, then if you can get everybody to participate, then it's less pressure for you. If you clean up but everybody around you's overgrown, then, well,
Doesn't do much good.
but it doesn't do much good, that's right.
Well, one of the things that I either read on one of these websites or was told this, so forgive me for not knowing exactly where I got the information, but that there were, I don't know if it was from the fire department or someone that would come in and do an assessment of your area and tell you exactly what the suggestions would be for making your particular area safe. I know you can't always, prevent fire, but you can prevent your losses by doing things. And so,
And so that's kind of what we wanted to do today, is just kind of get the ball rolling and see where you all want to go with it, because there's a number of directions that we can go. One of them is do nothing.
we don't want to do that, I don't think.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, this is an assessment that me and Rick did for the village of Lincoln, and with Joe and his helper also, and the fire chief in Lincoln. But basically what it is we'll go through here and do an assessment of the community as a whole and kind of outline what we see, the heavy fuels, values at risk, things like if your house is on fire, is that driveway big enough for a big truck to come through and turn around? Is it even able to cross the bridge? Those kind of things that we can identify ahead of time so that they can either be addressed or at least you're aware of it.
When we send trucks out, the first trucks arriving would be from, Nogal, and I think they could get, let's say they could get into here, but we have a couple of tenders that they would definitely need. Tender is water.
Right.
So 2,000 gallon, 3,000 gallon trucks with water that we have to get close to the engines that are fighting the fire, i.e. whether it be a structure or the forest, what have you. So would they all come up the canyon? Probably not. Would we stage them somewhere safe? We hope. And so that's the thought behind some of that as well.
Included in that is not also, I think, don't get me to lying about the correct terms, but how you get in here and how you get out.
Ingress, egress.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
And that we're in a particularly dangerous situation, that we don't have a good way out of the canyon should a fire start lower in the lower portion of the canyon. And that was one of the other things that maybe it was Rick or you, Frank, that you talked about, that I think it was Rick that was talking about how that maybe through this assessment standpoint that we could find a place that could be designated as a safe area.
A safe place.
Yes,
That's correct.
and so part of this assessment would also include that. It would also include where, how we would go about getting water availability to the fire trucks that come in here, so they don't have to go all the way back down the mountain to get water and all of that kind of stuff.
Right, identifying water sources. Now, as far as the assessment, there's two aspects to it. This is a community assessment, which you look at the community as a whole. You can also do a home assessment, which is just your individual house.
And your property.
And everybody should do that. Everybody should do that on their own, and you can take one of these at the end. But it identifies what might be a problem in your particular house as far as a fire. Everybody kind of assumes that if there's a forest fire, the heat from the forest fire is going to burn your house. That's not necessarily the case. It's the embers that will fly through the air from a mile away that might land in a pine bed right next to your wooden deck that catches your wooden deck that catches the house on fire.
Right.
That's what burns 90% of the houses.
They saved several homes in Sonterra after the Little Bear because they went up and got on the decks and found the smoldering pieces in the deck that had they not, it would have burned.
Right.
There were pieces this big at 3:30 in the morning, and that's unusual for a fire to burn that hot, but that fire came off the mountain at 3:30 in the morning as if it were 3:30 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And there were pieces this big falling in the hood of that truck right there. Literally coming out of the sky. Pine cones that they found on those decks, pine cones and pieces, sticks and stuff that they found, and then the piece that came across here the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is fires they'll kind of create their own energy, but heat rises, right? So as heat rises, it sucks up whatever's burning that it is possible to pick up: pine cones, little sticks, leaves, whatever.
So it's not just ashes.
It's not just
actually-
ash. It could be burnt.
Actually,
It could be
small
on fire,
branches.
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
picks it up.
Huh.
And depending on the conditions, it's all weather
That's right.
related, but depending on the conditions, that can carry, and then when it runs out of steam, it drops. Well,
So
when it drops, it could start another fire.
So I guess it's similar to like when you're going, like when we're going home and we see the dust devils up.
Yes.
That
that's
heat
it.
rises and carries all that dust, so it carries all the fire and all the.
after a fire gets to be 10 acres in size, it can create its own weather.
Okay.
It is truly a running fire at 10 acres, and it's got good fuel, it will create its own weather.
And we call that spotting,
Right.
and it can spot, a quarter mile is
Nothing,
typical,
yeah.
that's average. A mile, I've seen it mile and a half away, where it can
Little
spot
bird
away
will
from the
go
fire. And people think, well, it's a new fire. Well, it's the same fire, but it's starting fires ahead of itself. And
So-
eventually they'll all burn together if we don't go put them out.
So obviously, every one of us needs to have a home assessment, or
Yes.
and then what from there? How do we go about this community assessment?
Okay, well, I just basically need to know what you wanna do and I will do it. Probably Rick and I, with the help of Joe and
Right.
and
Aaron.
I think with the people sitting here versus the people that I've spoken to or had email contact with, we probably have 15 or 20
I mean, it doesn't-
landowners.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but the more people that get involved, like we were talking about, the safer it is to put that chain together.
Well, one of the things that I'm doing, I forgot your name already. Joe, one of the things that I'm doing is I've put together a Facebook page, and I'm videoing this because there are many people who really want to be involved in this but can't be because of where they live. And my hopes are that this will, I can post these things on Facebook, that everybody in this room, you guys in particular that live here, you know people in this canyon, you know people in these communities, and I'm hoping that what we can do is, I can give you the Facebook address, for instance, and you can just start spreading the word, because I'm limited in what I can do. One thing I intend to do, though, is to do another mail out. I think there were 55 names in that I got as far as landowners were concerned, and I sent out a letter to them to all 50, to the 55 landowners that I had. I know some of the addresses and things were changed, but trying to get a method for getting information out there.
Email addresses would be outstanding. obviously,
Exactly.
because, I mean, that would be outstanding because
I'm working
everybody
on that.
that can have email, it's immediate, you
That's
can put
exactly
together
right.
something and everybody has it.
Well, and I think the other thing, I think Frank told me that you had said that we could have meetings at the Nogal Fire Department.
Sure.
And I think that would be even better, you're not so far up the canyon. It'd be a
It's
great
good for
place.
everybody to take a view of those that come up. I
Well,
think.
that's true. I don't mind at all.
But that said, either one.
Yeah, I don't have a problem at all hosting, meetings like this. Not at all. In fact, I'll do it every day and twice on Sunday if that's what it takes to get this thing going, because I think we really have an opportunity to do something that will be beneficial to all of us now and also to the generations to come.
Absolutely.
Well, let me, Fire Adapted Community is a different program, but they approach it a little bit different, and what they advocate is organizing a community. It doesn't even have to be a community, it can be a neighborhood. Just people that are interested in doing something, because if there's, and you're the spark plug for
Right.
the neighborhood, because it takes somebody to kind of push it. If nobody pushes it, nobody does it.
Ask
So-
my husband. I'm pretty pushy. Especially when it's something I'm excited about.
Right. And so that's the big thing. And like when we did Lincoln, the first meeting was small, just like
You know,
this.
like maybe this many people.
Yeah. The last meeting they had 35 people out. So it grows. It grows because of word of mouth. It grows because they see some interest. They see that there is some help for them. They're not out there on their own, and I want to get into that a little bit and show you where we're at with that. But part of it, I was telling Karen driving up here, part of it is a lot of people don't realize, they see a forest like this and they say, it's beautiful, don't touch it, don't cut a tree, don't do anything, it's beautiful. Yeah, it is, but if you don't do anything and a fire goes through here, you won't have anything.
If you can't see the forest for the trees,
Yeah.
you may have a problem.
And it's better to have it thinned out to a reasonable level and save what little you have than to lose it all.
Exactly.
And I can tell you, I look at it from a fire standpoint because I'm a firefighter,
Right.
and I look at it from a forest standpoint because that's my job, is timber management. So this canyon, basically from about a mile down all the way up, I would say is a very unhealthy forest. You can look at the trees and see all the mistletoe. You can see the overcrowding. There's a patch down here. The trees are so thick.
You can't even see through it. It's
you
that.
can't see through
it's
them,
that
and
one-
half of them are dying. They're
Yes.
dead.
Yes.
That's what happens. If you clear those out and leave a few spaced out, they'll grow into nice, big, pretty trees. And that's what you want to do with the whole forest. It's hard to do when you have 40 acres or 20 or even one.
Yeah, but if you have some big grassy meadows, and if you think you see a lot of elk now, you wait till you get those big grassy meadows.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I know my husband will tell you I tend to perseverate on things, but one of the things that I don't think people sit around and say, well, I don't want to take care of this, just because I don't have any interest in it. But number one, they may not understand the significance of the current status, where we are, and I too look at this forest and think, oh, this is exactly what I wanted, and I'm so fortunate that I got to move, have a place up here. So I think education is important, but I also, when I think about this home assessment, a lot of us don't really know exactly what needs to be done. And then once you find out what needs to be done, well, then it starts feeling a little overwhelming, because a lot of people, we're retired, we're on fixed incomes. And so having an opportunity to identify exactly what needs to be done and then come together collectively and do some of these things like what you've already spoken about, like the rollout. And I was even thinking about, you said that this community or this group that volunteer group that you had that did
Yeah.
clearing and things like that.
But what we're clearing is fallen trees across the trails.
Right. You might not, that might not be what your group does, but there may be some volunteer groups that we might be able to get together to try to help with some of these,
Yeah, that's true.
some of these situations, because I know, I mean, I look at just the deadfall on our own property and I'm overwhelmed.
But a lot of times it's the little things you do that make the biggest difference. Like raking the pine needles away from your house. Defensible space guidelines, which this is a simplified version if you all can read that. But the first 5 feet from your house is probably the most critical. If the first 5 feet is cleared of anything flammable, pine needles, dead grass, that kind of stuff. Green grass is okay if it stays green all the time, but
That doesn't happen a lot, does it?
preferably gravel or dirt or nothing, because that's real critical, is that first 5 feet as far as embers coming and landing. And then you start going out from there.
15, 20, 30.
Yeah.
So on that first 5 feet, doing that, and also in that, would that also be the screening for the soffit vents and things like that?
Well, that is, but that's two separate things.
Okay.
Yeah, we call it hardening the home. When you harden the home, you try to, for example, you don't want cedar shake shingles,
Right.
because they're flammable, preferably tin. You don't want a lot of times you have wood decks with these lattice things, and then pine needles and stuff accumulate
Right.
under, so the embers can get under there. So screens on the vents, if they're 1/8 of an inch in diameter or less, is good. And that's because the embers, if they're bigger than that, will be kept out of there. If they're smaller than that, they'll go in and probably extinguish themselves.
Okay.
So it's just those simple little things.
Are those the kind of things on the home assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things, the one thing that I start thinking about as you're talking about these things is, oh, we need an in-service. We need to know what it is that we need to do. I mean, that's really, how can you start until you know what it is you need to do?
Trees and brush, that are really right next to that first 5 feet also. If the tree's above the roof line, maybe that's okay, but if it's small and it's that close, it's time to get rid of it right now.
So that if the one thing you would tell us walking away from this meeting is, if you want to start doing anything, the very first thing you should do is work on the first 5 feet around your home,
And then extend from there.
and then extend from there.
And particularly important is what we call the ladder fields, which are the small trees under the big trees, because in a grass fire, they'll catch the little trees will catch the big trees will catch the next tree to it, and it'll just keep going.
Right.
But if you eliminate that ladder field, that fire stays on the ground and the firefighters can get to it.
Okay.
So we're just talking about personal property, not talking about the forest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, primarily because, okay, let me kind of back up. I'm with state forestry, but we don't have a forest. Our forest is yours. So our job is to help you manage your forest from a fire standpoint and from a disease, insect health, forest health. So the Forest Service, which is everything outside of this little valley, is going to be Forest Service. That's up to the Forest Service. They can do whatever they want to there. However, we can have some influence, and you can have some influence. If you have a product like this that says, we have done our assessment, 80% of the people are doing something on their property, when are you gonna clean yours up?
Okay.
And that also comes from the CWPP, right?
Yes,
County
Community.
Wildfire Protection, Community Wildfire Protection Plan.
But the assessment that you're talking about, the community assessment that you're talking about, would allow us to, or allow the procurement of these grants that would in turn allow this forest around us to be cleaned up, right?
okay, there's, a couple of things, that we do. We apply for grants, two different kinds of grants. One is a cost share, which is we pay 50% of the cost of the cleanup and the landowner pays 50%. If we have a large enough chunk of land, we can put into for a grant that we pay 100% of it.
But it's still just private land we're talking about, right?
We're talking
Okay,
private.
okay.
That's right.
And they're competitive. We're competing with Arizona and the rest of the state, but we have been successful in getting them here and there. So we just have to present the need and so on.
And in order to do that, we have to do this community assessment, correct?
That's a big part of it. The CWPP is a big part of it too.
Right, and we just
Now-
got that done.
Yeah, yes.
With the help of these guys and I say these guys, State Forestry, Forest Service, and the communities, but the Community Wildfire Protection Plan is something that's renewed every 5 years, and we just renewed it. And so,
And there's two other things that are happening. State legislature passed a House bill, that's House Bill 266, which what they did is they formed a committee. Unfortunately, it's all in Santa Fe, but anyway, they were given $2 million to decide where to put some money. Okay, so that's a start. So they are actually meeting next week, I think, or the next couple of weeks,
right.
to kind of start that process to decide where they need to put the money. That money is targeted towards watersheds. So this is a watershed,
Right.
so it would qualify for that. However, when you're looking at it statewide, there's a lot of watersheds. So we just have to put in
the important
the-
is
you know,
show something like
Yeah,
this that
the
shows the need.
However, that is just the beginning, because the way I understand it is that's gonna be a revolving fund. So 2 million this year, 2 million next year, you know, so if we don't get it this year, maybe we'll get it next year.
So if we're on the top 5 this year and we don't get it, maybe we rise to the top next year.
Yeah.
And we can still show the same need, and that's what,
And the mandate with that one and the other fund, which is the severance tax fund, that one has 4 million in it, but it doesn't, it's got different restrictions on it. But part of that bill requires the Forest Service and the state to work together to decide where those funds go. So that's where that other part where the Forest Service meets the private, that's where if we can sell it, we can say, okay, Forest Service, we need to clear your land. State money, but we're gonna clear your land.
And we need to do it because if you look at that map, you've got 418 households.
Right.
That's a lot of households in this area.
certainly, in
Does
there.
that include us on top?
Yeah, that
Yes.
includes you too. It's a 5-mile radius. And, oh,
That is a lot.
You want me to guess?
I'm gonna let her
I
look
think
at
I
it.
did start it.
That's more than I thought.
Yeah.
So did Lincoln get some money?
We just finished this, just,
Yeah, just 2 weeks ago.
yeah, just recently. So,
But they did, I think they were in the thought of get a roll-off so that they could start putting stuff in, and they are in a little different category because their land, other than private, is BLM. Not Forest Service so much, but BLM right there along the river and stuff, so they chat with the folks in Roswell, the Roswell BLM, and they have been helpful, but again, it's federal property, so you have to,
yeah.
You have to work with.
It's a little different scenario because their lands aren't as forested as yours is. It's more flat and open,
Right.
but it
And
still has
yeah.
tall grass that'll burn.
Well, what about this money that's going to be this cost share money that's going to be available towards the end of December? What kinds of things can we do as landowners to get some help with that money? I mean,
Okay, what that money is for is to try to get you to implement this defensible space stuff.
okay,
So we would start at the house and determine what needs to be done within that first 5 feet, within the first 30 feet, and within the first 20
okay.
feet.
So for landowners that do not have any kind of structure on their property, then that money probably isn't going to be for them.
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
It can still be used for them because what happens on their land can affect what
Somebody
happens
else.
on somebody
okay.
else.
So it is available for everyone.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And so for us to become prepared for that, to try to get access to that cost sharing money, how would we go about doing that? What would our first steps be?
All you have to do is make sure I have the money, and I've got some applications here.
So we need to apply for it.
Apply for it, and what that does is it puts you on the waiting list, and I just accumulate those, and when I get the money, then I start going through the list.
Okay.
And I start.
Okay, well, that's one of the things that I'm going to try to get out there I'm going to be doing a postcard for the landowners, and it'll have that Facebook page on there. It'll be asking for email addresses, and it's going to also speak specifically to that money,
Absolutely.
so that they'll be able to go on and download that application. I'll put that application up there.
But do you know about the Nextdoor app?
No.
It's specific for neighborhoods. Somebody tried to start it up for Nogal
Okay.
Canyon, and then I don't know how, because I had it in Houston. I got on it, but there's only like 4 people, and
Okay.
it won't get going unless there's 13 households. But
I'll check on that.
it's easy,
yeah,
and
okay.
then it's better than Facebook because it's only
I hate
specific
Facebook. Yeah.
to your neighborhood and issues in your neighborhood.
Okay. Well, I'll get some information from you before you leave. Okay, so that's good. So for this money that's cost sharing, it's available. We got to fill out an application. Now, what kinds of things can we do with it?
Like I say, it's meant to get you to meet the defensible space standards.
Okay.
Now, typically, it doesn't include dead and down, or if a fire has already gone through, then there's a lot of death. However, the way we look at it is, if you've got a property and you've got a couple of dead trees on it, it's fire hazard. It needs to be cleaned up.
What about like wood that you